Hi everyone, Rocco here. This is Wilna and welcome to our podcast. In the last episode, we talked a bit about the coronavirus, where businesses find themselves, and we touched on a very interesting subject: is that businesses are basically waiting. They're waiting on government, they're waiting on customers, they're waiting on international news events, maybe. And in this episode, we decided we wanted to talk about why they are waiting. So that's where the title comes from. Donna, why are they waiting?
I think we become so used to getting our cue from government or your clients, and that's a very natural response because this is how it has worked thus far. Government, I think, like more short term, like is my product banned or not? Are my clients allowed to come to me, etc., etc. And then a more longer term in terms of policy surety. What are governments doing? How are they helping people? How are they helping their people? Etc. But I think, and then your customers as well. If you have a business, you're waiting for the traditional sense of business to come back, you have to start looking at it in a different way.
But I think there's a psychological reason why we're waiting. And it may be, and I don't want to use the word indoctrination, because I know you don't like it. But I feel that throughout our years, we were taught to look for our cues from other people, be it governments. And once again, I'm not only referring to the South African government. I'm talking once again in the globally. We are waiting for cues from government. We are waiting for cues in maybe a more patriarchy sense, our father or families. We're always waiting for these cues, teachers, and I can go on. I mean, instead of asking ourselves, but what can I do? You're waiting for this cue from someone and then I'm going to react. And that's the problem that we're facing now at the moment is all businesses are waiting for the cue from, yes, I can go, instead of asking themselves, but what can I do now to basically get myself going?
No, exactly. That's a very good point. And I think it's not indoctrination as much as it is just how things work and how we are raised. Because we usually wait. Even if you go to university, we are taught or told, now we need lawyers. So let's push through your lawyer up.
Yes.
Now we need bookkeepers. But you never get to the point where you actually just take one step back and say, okay, I need to rethink how I got to this point, and then say, okay, how do I go forward? Because I think people are missing how they got to a certain point in business. They structured a business in a certain way. They had their clients, they had needs, they had wants, and they fulfilled it. That is not the question that companies are asking now. And that's the problem. That is not the question that people are asking now. And I think that is the question you need to ask yourself as a business owner, even just as an individual, is what do I need now? What do I want now? And then start again with asking yourself, okay, how did you get to that point? How do I move forward? And use that, because I think that question is not being asked. And I think that's the uttermost starting point of how to move forward, is asking that.
So just from a corporate point of view, I mean, I came from a corporate environment. When you had a disagreement with a coworker, it was always a case of, you can't resolve it here and now. Let's have a meeting and talk it out. And let's get HR involved. So I think systemically we've been taught to outsource our problems to someone else. If it's not government, then it's police. If it's not police, then it's there's always someone else that needs to solve my problem for me. So that's why this whole theme of waiting.
But what you're basically touching on is agency. You have to be your own agent. You have to take responsibility. You have to say, this is a new reality. What can I do to protect my family, to protect my business, my co-workers, and how do you respond to that? And just to add on the previous episode, we spoke about how Corona, the virus, has put a fast forward on events.
The inevitable.
But even in these ways of responding to a crisis, we have to respond very quickly. Everyone has to make very quick decisions. And a corporate structure of waiting for HR or waiting for direction, it's not going to do it.
No.
You have to think on your feet. First thing, go to your clients. Say, has your needs and wants changed? How can I, if I still want you as my client, what can I do to fulfill that need? Can I switch things up a bit? Must I cut my workforce? Should I add more people? Depending on what needs and wants are. But you have to take agency. You have to say, I'm going to take charge of this.
I really like that term, like agency.
You cannot wait, because waiting now is going to kill you. And it's killing people literally in the sense that they don't have money to feed their families anymore. You have to say, I have to do something now.
I take responsibility. I take ownership over this problem. I'm not going to wait for anyone to tell me what I can and cannot do. Is that
not can and cannot do? You need to say in your business, in your family, this is what we need to do to survive. This is what we need to do to go forward.
And I'm so glad you're pulling it back from business into family. Because it's not only business, right?
It's not only
Families are waiting.
Yes.
And you have this traditional family structure of, I know in some Afrikaans families, they don't talk about these things. And I believe the time to open up those communication channels are now. Because families need to take agency for themselves.
Yes.
So looking at what we have going on, and we're talking about taking responsibility, I think I want to talk a bit about how we as people and then we as businesses need to take ownership and need to take those decisions, because those decisions are hard. Those are not easy decisions because, for instance, there are certain rules and regulations in place that you can't break. But I mean, you can play in the grey area, for instance.
So let's take a traditional family now as an example.
Yes.
Say it's dual income. You lose one income now. What do? Do you use up your savings to sustain your lifestyle that you currently have to pay your bond and to do whatever? Or do you say, listen here, people, we're going to have to make some changes. We're going to have to sell the house, move into a small place. We're going to have to stop buying these kinds of foods and start buying these kinds of foods. But it's a conversation. And I think that is what a lot of people are struggling with. And yes, we do have a patriarchal society in South Africa where a lot of people don't talk about these things, but it's very important. It's very important to talk about and to make the hard decisions and to make them sooner rather than later.
Just to open up those communication channels so that new thoughts and ideas can foster and take root and take us forward, because if we're just sitting with the old stuff over and regurgitating the old stuff over and over again, we are in serious trouble.
Yes.
So that's the family portion of it. So let's have a conversation, let's internalize it, everyone has a voice, right? So we're taking that out of the family structure and into a business structure, because that conversation is completely different. I mean, you have a top, depending if you've got a matrix structure or I would say something else, but it's more of a top-down approach. I mean, we're seeing people being laid off, you know, and I mean, good or bad, I'm not going to judge because I'm not in that position, but the conversation needs to be different in a business structure, right?
Well, I believe in keeping things as simple as possible, and keeping it as simple as possible. It's the same discussion you need to have. It's the same hard decisions you have to take. Oh, what we are doing, is it sustainable? Yes or no? Are we going forward? Can we go forward in this manner? Yes or no? It's the same, exactly the same questions a business needs to ask. Is everything the same? Is our clients the same? Are we having the same turnover, etc., etc., etc.? Are their needs the same? Has this situation, Corona, and we are clawing our way towards a financial system meltdown, but is all those things the same? It's exactly the same questions. In my mind, it's the same conversation. And if you're not having it at home, you're not having it at business.
That's a very good point. Because what happens in your business, especially if you're an entrepreneur, translates directly into your family life and vice versa. The one, like in a knot, affects the other. So if you're waiting on the one end, you're waiting on the other end instead of pushing in the same direction.
Let's talk about what we've done.
Okay.
So, Rocco and I had this discussion a while ago, and we said, okay, this is what we're seeing. This is how things are changing. And that was pre-corona, everything.
But just to interject, we saw it in the charts.
We saw it in the charts, yes.
So,
and that's why how we based these decisions on that information, basically.
yes, because in the previous episode, you said we could see the inevitable coming.
Yes.
Okay, and we had a choice. Continue.
Yes. So our choice was to downscale. So we are selling off our properties one at a time, because for our plan now, specifically, it doesn't, we don't see it very long term. Maybe in South Africa,
globally, property isn't there.
Property value
isn't there.
So
not in the next 10 years, at least.
So we were raised, if you want to be successful in life, you have to have a load of properties. So what did we do? We went out, we bought a big house, bought a farm, bought some flats for investment, blah, blah, blah. What's that worth?
Whatever someone's willing to pay for it.
Oh, exactly.
It's got no monetary value except for the bank, I suppose.
Yeah, except for the bank, but they really don't care as well. So, and that's a decision we took, and we said we are going to
make sacrifices for the greater gain at the end. It's what it is.
But that was our hard decisions, and we made it a while ago, and we started to put this ball in
motion.
Yes, in
so
motion.
Interesting. What happened is we made this decision before Corona, and when Corona hit, we were sort of in limbo a bit. But the charts actually showed us that there's going to be this small window of opportunity just when we rebound out of Corona to basically give effect to our plan. But what you're saying is so true. It's about making no one wants to make sacrifices in life. Comfort is a deadly animal.
Yes.
Comfort lulls you in a false sense of security because you think I'm going to be in this position for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then something like this happens, and now all of a sudden you you're stuck. You're stuck waiting for something to happen because you are a creature of comfort.
And I think what we did as well that other people might struggle with if you have not had this conversation is we are cutting down. We're selling properties. We are starting businesses now.
We've started more businesses than we have in the last 15 years.
Well, I think some people are waiting.
Yes.
They're waiting. What are they waiting for? They're waiting for something or someone. And we've personally said, okay, this is what we see. We are going to take this as an opportunity to not future-proof ourselves. Because
let's just speak on, you can't future-proof
you
yourself.
can't future-proof yourself.
That's been made very abundantly clear.
Yes. You can prepare as best you can. And for ourselves, we said, okay, this is what we are going to do.
Yes.
We're going to start these businesses and we are going to take advantage of the situation and the wants and needs that people have now.
Are going to embrace the digital revolution.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Yeah.
Well, what I mean is there's been this fight against 4IR, right, by these traditional institutions
Yes.
and families saying, I'm not going to embrace technology. But you make a very good point. You said we opened the conversation and it was a really hard conversation to have.
Yes.
Let's be honest. It wasn't like a sit down and everything is amicable. There's fights. People will hopefully not throw things, but things are going to be said. But that's the only way that we can move forward in business and in families, or by having these robust conversations and
by making the sacrifices.
And by making the sacrifices. Because that's ultimately what a sacrifice is. It's a short-term setback for a greater goal at the end. So if I keep waiting now, then look, one of my university professors, he always used to say, if you're not going forwards, you're going backwards. So
that was me.
well, you might have stole it from him, but you didn't teach me second year economics, right?
No, but
just checking. So basically, his point was when you're stagnant, right? It's waiting is a point of being stagnant,
you're actually going
and you're going backwards.
Yeah.
Because there's things like so the world keeps moving while you keep standing still. If I've got my money in a savings account, inflation is eating your money's not working for you, so inflation is eating up into your profits, so you're going backwards. So that's basically the concept behind if you're standing still, then you're moving backwards.
Yes. So I think what we're trying to say today is that people need to have this hard conversation. They need to sit down, they need to get it out and say, this is what's going on. First, you need to accept what the reality is. And I think that is a very hard thing to do in any way. And then you need to move past that and think, what can we do? What can we change? How can we respond?
It needs to be an open and honest conversation, because you can't have a conversation where two people lie to each other, because then it's not going to help. And I find, from my own personal experience, being in business for this long in a corporate environment, people tend to lie to each other and ultimately doesn't help in the end. But I want to thank you, everyone, for joining us for our second episode. And hopefully you learned something today. From myself, Rocco, and Wilna, we wish you all the best. And remember to check out our social media links that we'll post. And also you can visit us on www.wrcapital.co.za. Cheers.